What's up, summoners, and welcome back to another Wild Rift Pro Guides video. My name is Tia, and today we're showing you one tip for every champion on the Wild Rift. Nate almost died when we did this on the League channel, but luckily there's only 62 champs in Wild Rift, so it shouldn't be nearly as hard for me. So hit that sub button and let's get into it. Tip number 1. Ahri can flash in her charm ability, making it very hard for the enemy to dodge that ability. In addition to that, you might catch some enemies off guard while looking insane. Tip number 2. Did you know? If you hit your Shuriken flip on a Twisted Fate that is ulting away, you can follow him through the entire map. This way, you're never going to get out-rotated. Tip number 3. Alistar can break crowd control by using his ultimate ability. So if you see that enchanted crystal arrow flying towards your carry, tank it. You'll save your carry and save him some valuable cooldowns. Tip number 4. Amumu can easily force an early Baron with a Liandry's Torment and his Despair ability. You should definitely watch out for sneaky Baron attempts if he's on the enemy team. Tip number 5. Annie's ultimate should not only be considered as a tool for damage. Its primary function is dealing damage, but you can use it as a mobile ward afterwards. This is extremely helpful when the territory is heavily uncontested and without a proper vision setup. Before we continue, make sure to check out our Discord in the description below. If you liked the video, make sure to hit like and subscribe to never miss anything Wild Rift ever again. Tip number 6. ASHE is not the strongest 1v1 ADC and is often disregarded as a viable pick. If you, however, enjoy playing ASHE, you should definitely think of changing your approach on laning. When you cannot beat the enemy in a fair fight, then play dirty. Just constantly harass them with volleys until they can't play anymore. Tip number 7. Aurelion Sol loves to clear the wave and reset for a quick rotation on the map. Most players make the mistake of just leveling up each ability once from level 1 to 3. However, a lot of times you can increase your lead on lane by putting another point into your second ability. This way you're gaining much more agency inside of the lane. Tip number 8. Blitzcrank isn't in the best of spots as of right now. His only move is a hook in a straight line, which can be, most of the time, easily avoided. If you want to be a Blitzcrank connoisseur, then you have to utilize the space around you. Make sure to keep the hook for the vital moment rather than trying to fish for some highlight clips. As a true connoisseur of our channel, you already know what's about to hit you. Time for our question of the day. Can you think of a tip for your favorite champion you want us to know about? Make sure to let us know in the comments below. Tip number 9. BRAUM can increase his reach for an engage by jumping onto an allied minion. Not many people expect this kind of play and are usually caught off guard by such aggression. Alternatively, you can extend the range even more by adding a flash to it as well. Tip number 10. Camille can avoid harmful spells by just ulting a person that's close to her, effectively letting the enemy spell disappear into thin air. Definitely pay attention to that move when you're in very rough skirmishes and you need every single advantage possible. Tip number 11. CORKI's package can be seen through Fog of War. The moment you know he's picked up the package, you can follow him in the Fog of War by spotting the package's particles. We don't know if it's a bug, but we hope it is. Tip number 12. DARIUS usually struggles to find impact in a fight due to his requirement of getting his passive stacked. Any enemy tank you can spot on the enemy team can be used as a tool to stack your passive before going onto the actual carries. This way you can just auto-attack and ult them instantly. Tip number 13. Diana players should aim to pre-stack her passive before looking for a quick trade with the enemy. As a result, your trade will be much more powerful and might grant you access to other opportunities. Tip number 14. Dr. Mundo gains a lot of physical damage with his Masochism ability. In addition to that, it also works as an auto-attack reset. Inside of a skirmish, it grants up to 90 increased attack power. So go and auto-attack some more. Tip number 15. DRAVEN's ultimate ability is a great tool for dealing massive damage inside of a team fight. Tip number 16. Another great use of it is throwing it to clear huge waves on the other side of the map, especially when you have to stick with your team in the later stages of the game. Tip number 17. Evelyn's ultimate smite combo secures every objective in the game. Once you're able to properly utilize the combination, you can steal and secure any objective in the game. Tip number 18. When you're hitting Essence Flux on an enemy champion as an Ezreal, your Arcane Shift is going to always prioritize that target as long as it is in range, regardless of the number of surrounding targets. Tip number 19. As FIORA, you can look for an easy to proc Vital and then instantly ult to proc another Vital in the same spot. Consequently, you're gaining one additional Vital to proc, which could make the difference inside of a fight. Tip number 20. Fizz can hide his ultimate animation by using his first ability on a unit. You've seen it yourself. Normally, it's a rather obvious animation and easy to play around. By camouflaging your intent in that manner, you can catch your opponent easily. Tip number 21. Garen's second ability, Courage, reduces all damage taken by 60%, as well as increasing his tenacity by 60% for 1 second. The bonuses are cut in half for the remaining duration. Think about a full AP Gragas engaging you. His entire kit is centered around cooldowns that, once used, leave him in a short period of not being able to deal damage. Utilizing that mitigation might allow you to turn the tide. Don't forget about it. Tip number 22. Nobody can flash away from Gragas' body slam once they're in rage, and Gragas still has flash. Gragas can simply extend his obnoxiously big hitbox with his flash and always hit you. Tip number 23. Graves can use his ultimate to close a gap or cross a wall rather than dealing damage with it. In some cases, your ultimate ability's damage won't be enough to kill the enemy. However, getting in range by shooting it backwards and dashing forward might allow you to stick to your enemy. Tip number 24. Janna can be an absolute carry in lane. It's a pick that flourishes the better you are as a player. Her first ability isn't only a tool to disengage from a fight. You might as well use it from Fog of War to chunk away a significant amount of your enemy's HP. Hitting a fully charged tornado with a Zypher and an auto attack can take away like 50% of the enemy's ADC. So go ahead and work on finding opportunities to hit those nados. Tip number 25. Jarvan's known for being annoying as a jungler. He's not particularly the strongest champion, but he can make a laner's life living hell. As you're ganking with J4, try to enter a lane from behind and hold your flag and drag combo. Walk closer to your enemy and force him to blow his flash summoner spell. Instantly react with your combo to the enemy's flash and secure the kill. GG, jungle diff. Tip number 26. Jax's ultimate ability grants him additional damage on every third consecutive auto attack. You're able to briefly store that third hit and use it for additional damage, similar to Diana, for a quick trade or an all-in. Tip number 27. Jhin isn't your ordinary ADC. Compared to other ADCs, he's able to initiate a fight by calling the final curtain. Fortunately, he can also zone off lower HP enemies by casting his ultimate ability, as they have to respect the possibility of being sniped if they stay in the area. Tip number 28. JINX's laning power is often not utilized properly. Her rocket launcher's auto attack range exceeds most ADC range. Try and shoot your enemy every time they're going for a minion. Do not let them get those for free. Tip number 29. Kai'Sa greatly benefits from teammates with hard CC. If you're planning on building team comps around Kai'Sa, you should definitely look for champions that apply her passive marks. The change in damage is quite noticeable, as you're able to proc your passive a lot faster. Tip number 30. Katarina's ability to jump on her daggers is very obnoxious to deal with. When you're playing against champions like an Ahri, you should be extra careful how you use your Shun Po. Be patient and bait the Ahri into using her charm, rather than forcibly trying to just jump on her. Tip number 31. Kenan's ultimate grants him armor and magical resistance. If you're about to get hit by an enemy and fear being one-shot, you should rather ult for additional defensive stats than just flipping the coin and maybe staying alive. Tip number 32. Lee Sin can effectively bait the enemy by hitting them with his first ability and recasting it. However, you should use Safeguard to dash away once you're too close. This way you might trick the enemy into using vital cooldowns. Tip number 33. It doesn't matter how many targets you're going to hit with your Zenith Blade, you'll always dash to the furthest away enemy you hit. Tip number 34. Lulu can place her second spell on the floor and shoot her first ability from that location as well. Tip number 35. Lux's ultimate cannot be stopped. Whatever crowd control happens to your character, it will not stop your ultimate ability from going off. We got some interesting clips of that in our 10 OP Wild Rift mechanics you must know video. If you're interested in such mechanics, make sure to check it out. Tip number 36. Malphite doesn't need to win lane at all. He's very happy with going even and just sitting back on his lane. You're not picking Malphite to stomp lane. You're picking Malphite to be that unstoppable, rock-solid force that secures Dragon at minute 4. Tip number 37. It's not easy to spot Master Yi's primary target when he's using his first ability. You can easily fool your enemy by casting it on a target that doesn't seem important to you. Tip number 38. Miss Fortune can increase the value of her ultimate by combining it with making it rain slow. You're guaranteed some more hits with your ultimate this way and potentially getting a kill or some extra cooldowns for your trouble. Tip number 39. Nami can unironically cast her first ability and ultimate ability on allies to increase their movement speed. This counts as a buff, therefore applying Airy to that target. Tip number 40. Nasus can be played in the support role, going full AP and maxing his third ability. His goal in this role is to just push and harass the enemy. Tip number 41. Olaf becomes immune to crowd control the moment he activates his ultimate ability. When you're running into a fight, make sure to use your ultimate early enough so the enemy cannot stop you from going in. Tip number 42. Orianna is one of the best, if not the best mid laner on the Wild Rift. Playing around her ball is a very tough task and you can easily lose it inside of a fight. I'd recommend not using auto-aim inside of a team fight if you plan on using your ult. It's way more reliable if you cast it manually. Tip number 43. Pantheon can easily leave lane once he has access to his ultimate ability. Try to accelerate the game by making plays in other lanes with that long-range engage tool. Tip number 44. Even if you knock up a RAKAN while he's using his grand entrance with the Janna Tornado, he's still going to knock up the people that are inside of the spell's circle. Tip number 45. Seraphine's power is often overlooked. Her double cast second ability grants increased healing for each ally inside of that zone. Tip number 46. Shyvana's jungle clear is one of the fastest in the game. Her power clear is nearly unmatched. However, making good use of your third ability is key for a fast clear. Once a monster is already on low HP, do not waste your third ability's cooldown on it. Rather, keep it for the next camp. Tip number 47. Singed isn't known for his immense upfront damage. His goal is to run around in a teamfight and annoy as many people as possible. Instead of just running into the enemy team, you can peel for your carry by creating space, utilizing your first, second, and third ability. Tip number 48. Sona has an inbuilt mini exhaust on her second ability. Every single time when you're about to be hit with a lot of burst damage, Sona can make use of her stacked passive and second ability to reduce the damage dealt by the target by at least 25%. Tip number 49. Soraka's Starcall gains 40% increased damage and size after she has healed an ally champion 3 times. Tip number 50. Teemo can be very effective against champions that rely a lot on auto attacks. In a late game teamfight, you can even debate flashing towards an enemy ADC to just blind him for up to 2 seconds. Tip number 51. Tristana's bomb isn't only stacked by auto attacks. Her second ability and her ultimate also grant her explosive charge an additional stack. Tip number 52. Don't play Tryndamere. Just joking. Make sure to hit all lane minions down to low HP, then cast your first and third ability at the same time. Your first ability is going to consume all rage, but as you're executing the minions with your third ability, there will be a lot of fury restored. Tip number 53. Try to farm a stacked deck before you look for a trade with a gold card. The additional damage is massive inside of a trade in lane. Tip number 54. Varus's laning phase can be improved by starting with Hail of Arrows. It's just easier and more reliable to hit than all of his other spells. Tip number 55. Vayne can tumble into terrain to cancel its animation. That way she can attack faster than she'd tumble normally. Tip number 56. Vi can poke enemies through minions using her excessive force. You can also make use of that when diving and barely being out of range from a kill. Just hit the tower with excessive force and get yourself that kill. Tip number 57. Whenever a melee champion tries to go for a minion last hit, Wukong can increase his auto attack range by casting Crushing Blow to punish the enemy laner. Tip number 58. Xayah doesn't like running after the enemy. It's in her best interest that the enemy is running into her. If the enemy doesn't pay attention to the amount of feathers that Xayah left behind them, then they'll quickly meet their end. Tip number 59. Before you dive as Xin Zhao, try to stack your 3 Talon Strike twice and then use your Audacious Charge. The enemy will be instantly knocked up and unable to move. Tip number 60. When you cast your third ability as Yasuo while your first ability is still on cooldown for about 0.4 seconds, you'll make it go off cooldown. Tip number 61. Every single time Zed hits an enemy with Shadow Slash, his Living Shadow's cooldown is reduced by 2 seconds. Getting your Shadow off cooldown faster gives you much more room to play in a teamfight. And tip number 62. Ziggs's ultimate can be a tool to stop the enemy from doing objectives. As long as it's available, it's very risky for the enemy team to go for any major objective. In case you didn't know, Mega Inferno Bomb's damage in the later stages of the game is easily more than 1,000 damage. Whew, that wraps up today's video on one tip for every champion on the Wild Rift. I may have survived, but I don't feel alive on the inside. Thank you for watching. Hope it was worth it for your enjoyment, so make sure you hit like and subscribe because I did it for you, all of you. Also, stop by our Discord and say hello. Don't forget to share your response to the question of the day in the comments below. That's it. So, best of luck in your games, and I'll see you next time with hopefully less tips. But more tips, but less. More. Yeah, less more. But less but more.